For years now, British tabloids have pushed one relentless storyline: that Prince Harry and Meghan are secretly longing to return to the UK, that they regret leaving, that they're waiting for an invitation to crawl back into royal life. That narrative has been repeated so often it was treated like fact. But today that story collapses completely, because what's emerging now is the exact opposite. It isn't Harry and Meghan seeking a way back, it's the British establishment quietly trying to reverse what they allowed to happen. And the most revealing part? This effort isn't informal. It has a name, a literal internal label, something insiders are calling Project Thor. When institutions start assigning code names, it tells you everything you need to know about urgency, regret, and damage control. This information comes from reporting that even traditionally hostile outlets could no longer suppress. A senior royal correspondent acknowledged that there is growing momentum among establishment figures to restore the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to public life in Britain. Not as background figures, not as occasional visitors, but as active, visible contributors. And we're not talking about fringe voices or online commentators. We're talking about people inside government, cabinet-level figures, policymakers, influencers within the ruling political class. That alone should make everyone pause. Because these are the same systems that, just a few years ago, did nothing while Harry and Meghan were driven out under relentless pressure. The trigger for this renewed conversation is a decision by the Home Office to reassess security arrangements connected to Harry and Meghan. Now, on paper, this sounds procedural, boring, administrative. But here's the catch. The existing legal framework technically does not require this review. Harry and Meghan live overseas. The criteria doesn't naturally apply. So why initiate it now? Because someone wants conditions to change. Security has always been the largest practical barrier preventing the Sussexes from spending time in Britain. Remove that barrier, and suddenly a door reopens. Not because Harry and Meghan demanded it, but because others want the option back on the table. This is where Project Thor enters the picture. According to insiders, this is the internal shorthand being used for efforts aimed at rebuilding relationships between Harry, Meghan, the royal family, and the British public. That includes political figures working discreetly with palace-linked individuals. And yes, King Charles is reportedly aware of these conversations. Think about the significance of that. An institution that once allowed a younger prince and his wife to be isolated, vilified and scapegoated is now coordinating an effort to undo the fallout. That doesn't happen unless the loss is being felt. Let's talk about who is involved, because names matter. Senior Labour figures are reportedly among those who admire Harry's work and believe his absence from British public life has been a net loss. These are people who see Harry not as a problem but as a missed opportunity. One prominent cabinet minister is known to have developed a personal respect for Harry through shared humanitarian interests. Another travelled alongside him during an international visit and reportedly came away deeply impressed by how seriously he approaches service. These aren't casual impressions. These are people who understand optics, public trust, and generational relevance. There's also a political reality here that cannot be ignored. When Meghan joined the royal family, she represented something profoundly symbolic. Modern Britain, multicultural Britain, outward-looking Britain. For many progressive voters, she embodied hope that the monarchy could evolve. That promise was never fulfilled. Instead, it was crushed publicly and brutally. And now, years later, many within government recognise how badly that moment was mishandled. Not just morally, but strategically. You don't discard figures who resonate globally and then expect no consequences. Look at the contrast. Since leaving the UK, Harry has continued working on the issues that defined his public role. Veterans, mental health, trauma, resilience. His initiatives aren't symbolic, they're sustained, they're measurable. Meghan, meanwhile, rebuilt her professional identity entirely on her own terms. She didn't retreat, she didn't disappear. She expanded media, advocacy, entrepreneurship, while maintaining composure under extraordinary scrutiny. Meanwhile, the royal institution they left behind has struggled to inspire younger audiences or international enthusiasm in the same way. That gap hasn't gone unnoticed. This is where the conversation turns uncomfortable for certain quarters of the royal press. Because there's growing acknowledgement, even among insiders, that forcing Harry out wasn't the victory some thought it was. It removed one of the most emotionally relatable figures from public life. And once he was gone, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Authenticity versus performance. Engagement versus obligation. Connection versus choreography. You can't manufacture the kind of resonance Harry and Meghan had, and once it's gone, it leaves a vacuum. Back to the security issue. If authorities conclude that Harry and Meghan qualify for protection while in the UK, that changes everything. It eliminates the practical argument that Britain is unsafe for their family. There has even been quiet discussion about Harry wanting his children to feel connected to their heritage, about giving them access to family bonds they currently experience at a distance. Whether or not that ever happens is beside the point. The point is that these conversations are being initiated by the system, not by the Sussexes. And this realization flips the tabloid narrative entirely. For years, headlines insisted Harry was miserable, that Meghan had ruined his life, that he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Yet here we are, watching government officials attempt to engineer a pathway back. Who is really struggling with regret? Harry and Meghan are financially independent. They control their time. They choose their causes. They live without daily harassment. Meanwhile, the establishment is holding meetings, drafting assessments, and naming reconciliation strategies. That imbalance speaks volumes. This story isn't just about a couple. It's about relevance. Harry and Meghan represent values that institutions struggle to project convincingly. Emotional openness, cultural fluency, global awareness, social responsibility. They speak to demographics that traditional power structures have failed to engage. And now those same structures are realizing that dismissing them came at a cost. You don't discard bridges to the future and expect stability. So no, this doesn't mean Harry and Meghan are packing boxes for London. It means the truth has surfaced. They didn't leave because they were weak. They left because they knew their worth. And now, years later, the very system that tried to minimize them is quietly acknowledging what it lost. That isn't desperation on the Sussexes' part. That's leverage. That's influence. That's proof that walking away was the most powerful move they could have made.